The Search for Nicola Bulley, a story of loss and lessons. Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, hosted by J. Nicoll Investigations. Today on World Cold Case Thursdays, we're taking a closer look at the case of Nicola Bulley. While this case has been resolved, it offers valuable insights into the challenges of investigating missing person cases and the profound impact of media and public speculation. Join us as we delve into the details of Nicola Bulley's disappearance, the search efforts, the media frenzy, and the lessons learned from this tragic story. Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. It's a gripping true crime podcast uncovering unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from Ontario and beyond. Told with deep research, compelling storytelling, and a voice for the victims. Join us today, where every clue could lead to answers, and every case deserves a second look. Background and context. Nicola Bulley, a 45-year-old mortgage advisor and dedicated mother of two daughters, aged 6 and 9, lived in the rural village of St. Michael's on Wyre in Lancashire. Her life revolved around a predictable and relatable routine. Each morning she would drop her children off at school before taking her Springer Spaniel Willow for a walk along the River Wyre. This daily ritual was a cornerstone of her working-class family life, offering a moment of calm amid the responsibilities of parenthood and work. The village itself, nestled in the quiet corner of the countryside, exuded a sense of simplicity and community, with the River Wyre winding through it as a defining feature. However, the river's steep banks in certain areas would later prove to be a critical detail in the unfolding investigation into her disappearance. On January 27, 2023, Nicola vanished during one of these routine walks, an event that would disrupt the tranquility of St. Michael's on Wyre and draw attention far beyond its borders. The close-knit community was left reeling, struggling to comprehend how a familiar figure could disappear so suddenly from their midst. The River Wyre, with its picturesque yet occasionally treacherous terrain, soon emerged as a focal point. Its steep banks hinting at potential dangers may have played a role in the mystery. What started as a local tragedy quickly escalated, capturing the nation's attention and sparking widespread speculation. The day of disappearance, January 27, 2023. On January 27, 2023, Nicola Bulley began her day like so many others. Rooted in the comforting routines of family life in the quiet village of St. Michael's on Wyre. At 8:26 a.m., she stepped out of her home with her two daughters, aged 6 and 9, their school bags in tow, and drove the short distance to the local school. The morning was cold and clear, typical late January day in Lancashire, with a faint crunch of frost underfoot. After dropping her girls off, Nicola paused at around 8:41 a.m. for a quick chat with another parent. A fleeting exchange of small talk, perhaps about the weather or the school day ahead. It was a moment that seemed unremarkable at the time, but one would later stand out as her last known casual interaction. By 8:43 a.m., Nicola had shifted gears into another familiar ritual, her daily walk with her Springer Spaniel Willow. She set off along the well-trodden path beside the River Wyre, a route she knew intimately, heading toward a gate and a bench in the lower field. The river flowed steadily to her side, its steep banks a silent companion to her steps. Even as she walked, Nicola stayed connected to her work as a mortgage advisor. At 8:53 a.m., she fired off an email to her boss, perhaps a quick update or confirmation, her phone a tether to her professional world. Then at 9:01 a.m., she joined a Microsoft Teams call, her voice blending into the virtual meeting as she balanced the demands of her job with the tranquility of the riverside. The call wrapped up at 9:20 a.m., marking the last confirmed point of her morning routine. What happened the next 13 minutes remains a haunting gap in the story. At approximately 9:33 a.m., a passerby stumbled upon a scene that would unravel everything. Nicola's phone resting face up on the bench by the river, its screen still glowing and logged into the ended Teams call. Nearby, Willow's harness lay abandoned on the ground, a stark sign that something had gone terribly wrong. Willow herself was found wandering nearby, free but without her owner, a loyal companion left behind in a moment of sudden disruption. The discovery was jarring. A phone mid-task, a harness discarded, and no trace of Nicola. The serene riverside setting, a bench overlooking the water, a path flanked by winter-bared trees, took an unsettling air. Whatever had happened, it appeared swift and unexpected, leaving only these cryptic clues behind. By 10:50 a.m., the alarm had been raised. Nicola's family was contacted, their morning upended by the news, and the school where she dropped her daughters hours earlier was informed. What had begun as an ordinary Friday had spiraled into the launch of a major missing persons operation. Police descended on the area, and the search for Nicola Bulley began. A search that would grip her community and the nation in the days to come. Search efforts and initial response. The disappearance of Nicola Bulley sent shockwaves through the small village of St. Michael's-on-Wyre, and the response was immediate. Lancashire police hit the ground running, launching a search operation that was as rapid as it was expansive. The skies above the village hummed with the sound of drones and the thumping blades of helicopters. There were aerial vantage points scanning the sprawling countryside for any sign of Nicola. On the ground, police search dogs weaved through the undergrowth, their noses pressed to the earth, guided by handlers who knew every second counted. This wasn't just a local police effort. It was a full-scale operation, bolstered by specialist teams like Lancashire Fire and Rescue and the Northwest Underwater Search Team, whose presence signaled an early suspicion the River Wyre might hold the key to Nicola's fate. The community, too, refused to stand idly by. On January 29, just 2 days after Nicola vanished, local residents gathered at the village hall, their faces etched with concern and determination. They organized themselves to assist in the search, a powerful reflection of the bonds that tied this tight-knit village together. But the police, while appreciative, issued a plea for caution. The search required expertise and coordination, and untrained volunteers risked complicating the effort, or worse, endangering themselves. It was a tense moment, balancing the community's desperate need to help with the realities of a complex investigation. By February 3rd, a clearer picture began to emerge. Lancashire police announced their working hypothesis. Nicola had likely fallen into the River Wyre, a waterway known for its deceptive currents and steep, unforgiving banks. They were quick to add that the case was not being treated as suspicious, a statement that aimed to steady community on edge, curbed the whispers of foul play. This theory redirected the search, focusing efforts on the river and its surroundings, a task that grew more daunting with each passing day. The scope of the search expanded dramatically, and by February 8, it stretched 10 miles downstream, an immense distance that spoke to the police's commitment and the river's relentless power. To tackle this challenge, they enlisted underwater experts, including Peter Falding, seasoned specialist whose skills promised answers where others have faltered. But Falding's involvement took an unexpected turn. Early on, he declared with confidence that Nicola was not in the water, a statement that clashed with the police's hypothesis and sowed seeds of confusion. Later findings would contradict his claim, revealing just how tricky and unpredictable the search had become. What unfolded in those early days was more than a logistical mission. It was a story of a community and its police force united in a race against time. The whir of helicopters, the barking of search dogs, the quiet resolve of volunteers painted a scene of urgency and hope. tempered by the growing fear that the River Wyre held secrets, wasn't yet ready to give up. Media and public reaction. A media circus. The disappearance of Nicola Bulley didn't just ripple through her small community. It exploded into a full-blown media phenomenon that gripped the nation. In a single day, over 6,500 press articles flooded the internet as reported by Skeptical Inquirer, transforming the case of a 45-year-old mother vanishing during a routine dog walk into a headline-dominating saga. Newsrooms buzzed with activity, churning out updates by the hour, while the peaceful village of St. Michael's and Wyre became an unwilling epicenter of a relentless media storm. What started as a local missing persons case rapidly escalated into a national fixation, with every twist and turn, whether factual or fabricated, amplified by a voracious 24-hour news cycle. Social media only fanned the flames higher, with platforms like TikTok turning into hotbeds of speculation and conspiracy. Ordinary users morphed into self-styled detectives, flooding the app with theories about Nicola's fate, each video more speculative than the last. Hashtags like Find Nicola skyrocketed as people dissected grainy footage and spun tales of shadowy clues, an abandoned house, a mysterious red van, a stray glove, all of which police swiftly debunked as baseless myths. Lancashire police didn't mince words, slamming these TikTokers for playing private investigators and overwhelming the investigation with a torrent of misinformation to bog down their efforts to uncover the truth. For Nicola's loved ones, this wasn't just noise, it was torment. Heather Gibbons, a close friend, publicly decried the vile theories swirling online, calling them incredibly hurtful and a painful distraction from the urgent mission to find Nicola. The family, already reeling from her unexplained absence, found themselves battling a tidal weight of rumors, reduced a cherished mother, partner, and friend to a puzzle for public consumption. Each unfounded claim deepened their anguish, pulling focus away from the search toward a circus of conjecture. The chaos reached a breaking point by February 9, when police resorted to issuing dispersal orders to curb the swarm of social media influencers and amateur sleuths who descended on the scene. Armed with cameras, they filmed the riverside where Nicola was last seen, treating a family's tragedy like a live-stream drama for likes and views. The quiet path became a stage, the search a spectacle, proof that public curiosity had crossed into outright intrusion. The media and public reaction to Nicola Bulley's case was nothing short of extraordinary, a whirlwind that eclipsed the heartbreaking reality at its heart. What should have been a unified effort to find a missing woman devolved into a chaotic mix of fact and fantasy, leaving her family to face not only their loss, but the unyielding clamor of a world too captivated to turn away. Up next, police investigation and controversies. Police investigation and controversies. The investigation into Nicola Bulley's disappearance was already a pressure cooker of public attention. Lancashire police made a move that would set off a firestorm. On February 15, 2023, they stepped up to the podium for a press conference that would change the course of the case, and not for the better in the eyes of many. The world watching, they peeled back the curtain on Nicola's private life, revealing what they called specific vulnerabilities. They disclosed that she had been wrestling with significant issues with alcohol, a struggle they tied to her experience with menopause. They also dropped another bombshell. A welfare concern report from January 10, 2023 flagged Nicola as high risk. For the police, this was meant to shed light in their investigation. For everyone else, it felt like a spotlight turned on a woman who couldn't defend herself. The air in that press room must have crackled with tension as those words landed. The police framed it as context, necessary information to explain why they weren't treating Nicola's disappearance as suspicious. But to her family, it was a gut-wrenching invasion. They'd been clinging to hope, trusting the police to find their missing mother, daughter, sister. Instead, they watched as the narrative swerved from a desperate search to a public area of Nicola's personal battles. In their words, the focus had shifted from finding Nicola to her private life, and the distress it caused them was unimaginable. "We just want her back," they pleaded, their voices drowned out by the roar of headlines. The reaction from beyond the family was explosive. Labour MP Stella Creasy didn't hold back, slamming the police's decision as invasive. "This isn't how we treat someone in crisis," she said, her tone cutting through the noise. Then there was Peter Falding, the underwater search expert who'd been boots on the ground in the case. He didn't mince words either, branding the police's handling disgraceful. To him and to many others, this wasn't about clarity. It's about feeding the media beast, turning a missing persons case into a tabloid spectacle. But Lancashire police didn't back down. They doubled down, defending their choice to go public with Nicola's struggles. "We had to counter the speculation," they insisted, arguing that the details were critical to keeping the public from spiraling into wild theories. They saw it as a way to control the story, to keep the investigation grounded in reality. Yet for all their justification, it landed like a lead balloon. The family's pain deepened, caught in a storm of scrutiny they never asked for. Every news cycle that churned out another angle on Nicola's vulnerabilities was a fresh wound, a reminder that their private grief had become everyone's business. Picture it. A family already lost in the fog of uncertainty, now forced to watch as the world picked apart the life of the woman they loved. The police might have thought they were clearing the air, but many, they muddied the waters, trading Nicola's dignity for a shaky grip on the narrative. That press conference didn't just spark controversy, it became a fault line, splitting opinions and leaving a lingering question. Where's the line between transparency and respect? Someone's life hangs in the balance. Finding of the body and family response. On the morning of February 19, 2023, the long agonizing search for Nicola Bulley came to a somber close. At 11:30 a.m., a body was reported in the waters of the River Wyre, a chilling sight that stopped the community in its tracks. For weeks, this river had been the focus of speculation and hope, a winding thread tying together the mystery of Nicola's disappearance. Now it seemed to offer a grim answer. Emergency teams rushed to the scene, and by 2:30 p.m., after 3 tense hours of effort, the body was recovered from the water. Later that day, the news no one wanted to hear was confirmed. It was Nicola. The discovery sent a ripple of heartbreak through the tight-knit community that had rallied to find her. But for Nicola's family, it was a moment of unbearable clarity. In response, they released a statement that laid bare their grief and resilience. "Our worst fears have been confirmed," they said. Words that carried the weight of a nightmare made real. Yet even in their sorrow, they paused to acknowledge the kindness of strangers. They thanked the community for their unwavering support, a glimmer of light in an otherwise devastating time. But the family's statement wasn't just a farewell, it was a reckoning. They turned their grief into a sharp rebuke of the press and public. It spun a web of speculation around Nicola's disappearance. They called out the baseless accusations leveled at her partner, Paul Ansell, who'd been unfairly painted as a villain in a story that needed no more pain. Friends and family, too, had been vilified, caught in a storm of judgment they didn't deserve. The family's frustration was palpable, their words a plea for the dignity they'd been denied. Then came the line that cut the deepest. "We will never be able to comprehend what Nikki had gone through in her last moments, and that will never leave us." It was a haunting admission, a window into their ongoing torment. They weren't just mourning Nicola's loss. They were grappling with the unknowable horror of her final hours. pain that would linger long after the headlines faded. The finding of Nicola's body marked the end of a search. But for her family, it was far from closure. Their statement stood as both a tribute to Nicola and a demand for reflection. A reminder that behind the mystery was a woman, a family, and a wound that wouldn't heal. As the River Wyre returned to its quiet flow, left behind a story of loss and a call to do better. Up next, inquest findings, June 2023. Inquest findings, June 2023. On June 27, 2023, a hushed crowd gathered at Preston County Hall, the weight of months of uncertainty pressing down on the room. This was the day the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death would finally draw to a close. Dr. James Adley, the senior coroner for Lancashire, stood the voice of authority, delivering a ruling that will put an end to the speculation. Nicola's death was accidental. It was a moment of clarity. A single sentence unraveled the mystery and replaced it with a sobering truth. The inquest laid out its findings with precision. Each detail a piece of the puzzle that explained how Nicola's life had come to such an abrupt end. Cause of death: drowning. The investigation found no evidence of assault or third-party involvement. Theories of foul play which once run rampant were swept away by this simple fact. Nicola's death was a tragedy, not a crime. She was alive when she entered the water, and importantly, not under the influence of alcohol. Tiny traces detected in her system were attributed to natural post-mortem processes. A technical footnote that highlighted the care taken to separate fact from fiction. At around 9:10 a.m. the day she vanished, witnesses recalled hearing a short, sharp inhale scream. It's a sound that pierced the morning air. A gasp of shock, perhaps, as Nicola lost her footing and fell. That fleeting cry became a haunting clue, suggesting her plunge into the river was sudden and unintended. Pathologist Dr. Alison Armour provided further evidence. Mud smeared in Nicola's forehead and the unmistakable signs of drowning in her body. These were the marks of an accidental fall, a vivid image of a woman caught off guard by the river's edge. But amidst the clinical details, Dr. Adley paused to reflect on the human cost. At the center of this inquest, he said, his words carrying a quiet gravity, are two children who've lost their mother, a partner, and parents who've lost a daughter. It was a stark reminder that Nicola was more than a case file. She was a woman whose absence left an indelible mark on those who loved her. The inquest at Preston County Hall had delivered its answers. An accidental fall, a fatal encounter with the water, and a family forever changed. For the public, it was closure. For Nicola's loved ones, it was the beginning of a lifelong reckoning with loss. Aftermath and ongoing impact. The conclusion of Nicola Bulley's inquest in 2023 didn't bring the closure her family desperately needed. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a relentless spotlight, hounded by an online obsession that refused to fade. Paul Ansell, Nicola's partner, captured the weight of this ordeal in a 2024 BBC documentary titled The Search for Nicola Bulley. He called the public's fixation a monster, a vivid, haunting description of the invasive attention that stripped them of the right to grieve in peace. The documentary didn't just revisit the search, peel back the layers of media coverage and the flood of amateur sleuths, turned a personal tragedy into a public spectacle, amplifying the family's suffering. The media didn't escape the family's ire either. They accused journalists of misquoting them, spinning their words into distorted narratives, and even vilifying them for the sake of sensational headlines. wasn't just a personal grievance, it was a call to action. The Bulleys demanded accountability, urging reforms to ensure other families wouldn't endure the same relentless scrutiny and misrepresentation. Their message was unequivocal. This kind of media overreach had to stop. Meanwhile, an independent review by the College of Policing, released in November 2023, offered a measured perspective on the authorities' handling of the case. It concluded that the police response was competent, despite the initial challenges posed by an investigation thrust into the chaotic arena of unprecedented social media interest. The review recognized the near impossible task the police faced, conducting a thorough search while contending with the digital wildfire of rumors, speculation, and misinformation that often outpaced official updates. The aftermath of Nicola Bulley's disappearance revealed more than just the pain of one family. It exposed a double-edged sword of a hyper-connected world. The monster of online obsession, as Ansel put it, left a lasting mark, not only in the Bulleys, but also in the broader conversation about privacy, media ethics, and the role of social media in modern tragedies. For Nicola's loved ones, a search for peace remains an ongoing struggle, long after the headlines moved on. Up next, lessons learned. Lessons learned. The disappearance and death of Nicola Bulley casts a stark light on the complexities of handling missing person cases in the public eye. One of the most critical lessons is the necessity of responsible media coverage. With over 6,500 articles published in a single day at the peak of the story, the media amplified awareness, but often at the cost of turning a family's private grief into a public spectacle. This underscores a vital principle. Coverage must prioritize sensitivity over sensationalism. Respecting privacy in such cases isn't optional. It's a fundamental duty to protect those already suffering. Another key takeaway is the dangers of social media speculation. Platforms like TikTok fueled a frenzy of amateur detective work, theories about abandoned houses, red vans, and discarded gloves spreading unchecked. This not only complicated the investigation, but also deepened the emotional toll on Nicola's loved ones. The public's curiosity must be tempered by compassion. Supporting a search effort is one thing. Hijacking with baseless conjecture is another. This case serves as a warning. Online speculation can wound as much as it seeks to inform. The challenges of police communication also came into sharp focus. Lancashire Police's choice to reveal Nicola's struggles with alcohol and menopause aimed to quell rumors, but instead ignited a firestorm of debate about ethics versus transparency. Was it right to disclose such personal details, even to clarify the narrative? The question lingers, highlighting the tightrope law enforcement walks between informing the public and safeguarding a missing person's dignity. It's a reminder that every official statement carries weight, especially under intense scrutiny. The conclusion? As we draw this episode of Ontario Cold Cases to a close, we're left with a story that's equal parts tragedy and teacher. Nicola Bulley's disappearance on that cold January morning of 2023 turned a quiet riverside walk into a national ordeal. One that ended with a heartbreaking discovery of her body in the River Wyre. Today in World Cold Case Thursday, we walk through her story, not as an unsolved mystery, but as a resolved case that still echoes with profound lessons about loss, community, and the consequences of a world that watches too closely. We began with Nicola's life in St. Michael's and Wyre, a devoted mother, steady routine, a village bound by simplicity. Then came January 27th, when that routine shattered, leaving behind a phone on a bench, a wandering dog, and a family plunged into uncertainty. The search that followed showed us as a community's heart and the police's resolve, even as drones hummed overhead and divers scoured the river's depths. But it also showed us something darker, a media storm that churned out over 6,500 articles in a single day, a social media frenzy that spun wild theories faster than facts could catch up. The police faced their own reckoning too, with a controversial decision to reveal Nicola's personal struggles. A move meant to clarify, but one that left her family feeling exposed and betrayed. The inquest gave us answers: accidental drowning, sudden fall, life lost to the river's edge. Yet for Nicola's family, closure remains elusive. Her partner, Paul Ansell, called the public succession a monster, and who could argue? The headlines moved on, but the bullies still grapple with a grief magnified by scrutiny. It calls for media reform to a plea born from pain. So what do we take from this? Responsible media coverage isn't just a buzzword, it's a lifeline. When reporting drowns out dignity with sensationalism, it's the families who pay the price. Social media speculation can be a double-edged sword. Curiosity is human, but unchecked, it wounds as much as it wonders. And for the police, the challenge of communication is a tightrope. Transparency matters. So does respect for the person, the heart of the case. Nicola Bulley's story asks us to look beyond the mystery. She was a mother of 2 little girls, a partner, a daughter, a woman whose loss rippled far beyond the River Wyre. As we sign off, I invite you to reflect. How do we engage with these stories? How do we honor the human lives behind the headlines? Share your thoughts with us if you feel moved to. Until next time, this is J. Nicoll Investigations, thanking you for joining us on Ontario Cold Cases. Let's keep telling these stories with the care they deserve, because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice. Subscribe now to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Episodes available wherever you get your podcasts.